we had rumors and we would gather going to fetch water, and then when we did see him pass by, we would sing a song, because we got to know that this man used to do incest. Yeah.
No, Ajat, now what we'll do is once the program kicks off, inshallah, which is about now.
Sometimes I get nervous to make any discussion, especially in this language, which I'm not so very comfortable with.
I always make sure I make it easily palatable for some people.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's such a very sensitive issue you're touching tonight, and I'm sure the women might be able to contribute a lot. Maybe some might fear because they might think really it might go back to them, but yes, it's a sensitive thing.
Okay. No worries at all. Isma in the studio, Salaam alaikum. Can you hear me, please? I sent you some 2 videos. I needed confirmation so that we kick off. It's already 4 minutes and our people are in here. So we could maybe do the introductions while waiting for people and get a few, one clip at least playing that we have. But also what downloading. When they are ready, please let me know. Creepy dad. Creepy dad, stepdad gets daughter pregnant. No. Yeah. So for those who have just joined us, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Isma, when you have that ready, we can just have our opening sync tune and we get clocking. We wouldn't want to keep them waiting. So. And for those who have already joined, thank you very much. Today is another special program in which we shall be delving into some difficult territory like we have done in the past few days, looking at subjects that touch us within the community, within our societies, topics that are sometimes unspoken about, but which actually need to be spoken about. Today, we shall have a religious perspective actually kicking us into this, just to sort of provide some bit of guidance, but that does not limit our conversation, which delves out. You'll have the opportunity to be able to say what you think, about tonight's topic. And remember, this is our global community conversation. The program is Come, Let's Talk with me, KASSIM KAYIRA, 5 minutes past 8 o'clock. And the conversation today is betrayal. That is, we've just called it as a sort of a mini series, Betrayal, and this is part 2. In this part, we shall be looking at the issue of what looks like incest in some instances, but it goes beyond that. I'll paint the scenario, but I'd just like to welcome you all. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, this is Come, Let's Talk with me, KASSIM KAYIRA, live on 75W Radio on Facebook, and live on YouTube and Zoom via Umma Connect. Tonight, inshallah, we shall be talking about betrayal, but from a different perspective. If you look at the global dynamics at the moment in time, there are many divorce rates taking place, people, couples or relationships breaking up. As a result, many women and many men go away, but oftentimes what happens is that the women live with children from the previous relationships. And we are specifically talking about girl children. By leaving these relationships and entering new relationships, getting married to new husbands or getting new boyfriends, what is happening in that particular perspective is that the women then carry the children from the previous relationship. And we are specifically talking about girl children, at least here in this particular perspective. And the story of tonight is a woman who is in a very serious dilemma. You can choose probably who to apportion blame to, but I don't think apportioning of blame would change the situation. Woman had got impregnated, and the man responsible or irresponsible for that refused to acknowledge, having impregnated the woman, and therefore the woman left without the acknowledgement of a father to the pregnancy, gave birth to a baby girl. 3 years later, she finds new love and enters into this new relationship of a man who loved her and loved her child. One of the ways actually that men get to, because they say the way to a man's heart is through his stomach. Cook him good food and you'll have his attention. The way to a woman's heart is through her children. If you love her children, if you love their children, almost certainly you'll get the attention of the woman. So this husband takes on the stepdaughter, marries the woman. They stay together for a couple of years. Husband looks and actually likes the stepdaughter so much, so much that he starts looking after her, does all the all the looking after, all the paying of school fees, all the tuition. Girl grows up and graduates to become an architect. This is a story that has been doing the rounds, going viral online. And some of these topics you might wonder, why would a sheikh, for example, bring a topic like this? But these are the issues that we have to deal with day in, day out within our communities, within our societies. This is what we have to put up with. And the more I think we understand this, the better, the much more readier we are to deal and deal with these circumstances. So it helps to touch these almost untouchable subjects, but then provide a bit of religious context to this. And today, actually, I opted that this must have a sort of a religious binding. This man looks after the daughter or the stepdaughter, graduates, becomes an architect, gets her own place, but then the relationship, the coziness between the stepdad and the stepdaughter is such that, probably to an outsider, it would have raised some eyebrows, which did to the mother. Unbeknown to the woman, unbeknown to the mother, the stepfather was sleeping with the stepdaughter, and it ends up in a pregnancy. She gives birth to a son. In the relationship, though, the husband and wife had not had a chance to have any child within their marriage, and therefore the only child that was existing was this stepdaughter to the man. So now they get a grandchild, a son, who the daughter claims, is not talking about the father. The mother didn't prod much because she had her own personal experience, which was a husband who refused to acknowledge or take responsibility for the pregnancy that was resulted into this particular girl. And therefore, she didn't push that much. But they decided, because they were so close and the stepdad had helped her so much, in the process of growing up, she decides to name this grandson or step-grandson by the man's surname. This is how deep it got. Actually, the deeper you look at it, then you wonder, women are always very good at investigations. Could the mother not have seen any telltale signs? Long story short, daughter gets pregnant with the second child, and then complications come along the way. She's admitted in hospital. The daughter had never allowed the mother access to her apartment since she moved out, and therefore it was only the stepdad who would be communicating and so on, and just looked like the normal stepfather-daughter relationship until this daughter gets admitted in hospital. The father or the stepfather is away on safari, and therefore the mother has to go to the daughter's apartment to pick up some stuff and therefore be able to stay with the daughter in hospital. And surprise, surprise, to the shock of her life, once she gets in, what does she face? Romantic photos of the stepdad with the stepdaughter in the in the room, including even what looked like quite detailed existence of a relationship where the new grandson, the new grand stepson, was actually in the middle between the stepfather and the stepdaughter. It was clear without any shade of doubt that stepfather and stepdaughter had been sleeping together. The woman in this midst of the shock only comes to realize there was a passport ready and tickets for the three of them, the grandson, the stepdaughter, and the stepfather, which meant probably they were planning either to elope or move away or probably go for holiday somewhere without the knowledge of the wife. I mean, you can imagine, put yourself in the position of this woman who in that moment, realizes that she finds herself in the midst of a very difficult situation. What would you do? Who would you blame? Would you blame the wife? Would you blame the husband? Or would you blame the daughter, who in this particular instance probably maybe seem or come across as shameless? But before you cast the stone, it is always good to understand the dynamics surrounding this. Now, this topic is very relevant because in today's world, lots of relationships are breaking out. In breaking down, it means women are leaving previous relationships, sometimes abusive, sometimes just a sense of, not being able to be cognizant or agree on how to disagree on how to live together. The women move out with the children, end up in new relationships where these children have to be living directly with the stepfathers. How can you provide? How can you protect these children? What sort of advice would you have for the person that has found themselves in a situation like this? If it was your daughter, for example, that broke up and ended up in a new relationship, as a parent, would you rather keep the child with you as a grandparent, maybe as a way of protection? I would like to hear from you. This is your global community conversation. Come, let's talk with me, KASSIM KAYIRA, live on 75 W Radio and live on Umma Connect on Zoom and on YouTube, where we are streaming live. You can watch back this program and other programs in case you have missed. Today, I've just thought that because there are certain things within religion that bring in context, a lot of the things that happen within context, and therefore, and religion is a guiding principle. Tonight, we are going to be having two religious authorities to help us delve into these difficult subjects. One is Sheikh Sulaiman Chibuka, a very renowned scholar, and at the same time also a journalist, an Islam channel. And then I also have Omkungu wa Samasanja Kabaka, Rachel Namudu, who is also joining us from the Seventh-day Adventist Church to be able to give us probably the Christian aspect to this conversation. Sheikh Chibuka, welcome to this conversation. Welcome to Come Let's Talk with me, KASSIM KAYIRA. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's a pleasure.
Thank you very much for joining us in this difficult conversation. First of all, listening to this particular story, what is your take? How does it feel for you?
Subhanallah, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillah, salatu wassalam wa rasulillah. We thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the blessings of life and also, all that we take for granted. And I think when you are giving a narrative, from the beginning all the way to the end, you could only tell one thing, that at the end of the day, the truth had to surface. And it did eventually surface. But I think I don't know how they manage to cope with it. We can only discuss about the situation. But I think it just tells you part of it just confirms what we know of the many maladies, moral maladies and the ailments in the society. These are not new things. And, it is strange. And I think I'm not quite familiar about some of the, other religious faith denominations, but I think this is something that has no place and has no recognition acceptable at all in any faith. It's true that sometimes as religious people, we might not be able to explain quite succinctly why certain marriage prohibition or certain relationship are forbidden. But I think, and even by common sense, this is abominable and not acceptable. But let's see, inshallah ta'ala, what our fellow colleagues, will have to make an input into this, because like it or not, these are daily occurrences that continue happening with so much devastating effect on individuals. And
so are you shocked? Are you shocked listening to this, or is it something that seems possible given where we are at today in today's world?
Look, I think I am shocked. I'm shocked by the fact that what appears to be common sense is not actually seen as one. But the reality is these are everyday stories. And I think recently I was this one of the a speech by one of our sheikhs whom Sheikh Ismail Ankata from Uganda, was giving a talk and was talking about situations where a neighbor, a man, a gentleman next door fathered a child, from the neighbor's wife, and from childhood the mother had known that this is not his child, but continued looking after them through infancy, adulthood, adolescence, all the way up to university, knowing that this is not his child. But I am shocked, but generally I'm not shocked. But what really shocks me is what appears to be common sense, to be honest. I'm just discovering it's not actually common.
Thank you very much, Sheikh Chibuka. Mukungu Namudu, I don't know if you are there. Mukungu Rachel, are you the one who is there as a Nyimba za Kristo? If you can just raise your hand, please. I didn't get to see what name you're using. Aha, it looks like that's you. If you can please unmute yourself. Welcome very much to this global community conversation. Thank you very much for accepting to join us.
Thank you. My name's Rachel Nabude. Nabude, not Namudu, Nedira Fumbe. Yes, thank you for inviting me to take part in this. I'm so sorry I didn't do my research. I thought this was going to be in Luganda, but I'll do my best to contribute.
You're already doing well. I mean,
in the English language.
There's no need for research. Actually, the reason is because there is kind of a taboo that is associated with this. If you're unfamiliar with this program, this is a global community conversation. We just no subject is out of discussion, but we do it decently. That unlike where people go and throw in lots of dirty stuff, this is a decent conversation, but which would touch even the most untouchable subjects, and therefore we delve into all areas, and that's why we thought that today having a sort of a general perspective, because we are going to hear, we've just seen Sheikh Chibuka, who is going to be speaking on the Islamic side, but we thought we should also get a Christian view, because family values are family values, regardless of whatever religion that someone is in. So listening to this story, the sort of the scenario that we have painted, first of all, I'd like to get your personal reaction. How do you feel?
Okay. All right. Yes. So listening to it, there are several issues. Let me first acknowledge that we've got the Islamic perspective as well as the Christian perspective. And when we talk about the Bible and the Quran, where these religions, which is the basis of these two religions, in my own view, we are talking about foreign cultures that have been, that we have adopted and accepted. For example, in the Bible, the best part of the Bible, the Old Testament, the stories and everything that happened in the Hebrew land. And therefore the recordings will detail the culture and the norms within the Hebrew setting. But because we have accepted that in our culture, the question I wanted to ask the people we are talking about, what is their culture and what would be normal to them? Are they from the Buganda setting, or are they from other tribes within, I don't know where they are from, but without knowing.
Place it in Uganda. Place it within a Ugandan context, yes, if that would help to make it.
Okay, all right. So we are in Uganda. We are, zeroing into Buganda. In the Bible here, if you go to, you can look it up, Leviticus, if you want, is in the English version, chapter 18, and the verse is 17. The Levites used to be the, Bakabona, those who served within the temple. This was a special tribe assigned to serve in the temple, and through them the laws and the norms and the terms and conditions of belonging to the Hebrew nation and to be accepted as one of their Lord's servant, you had to adhere to what the terms and conditions were. And one of the terms and conditions in this chapter, Leviticus chapter 17, chapter 18, verse 17, it says here, tewebakanga na mukazi ate ne muwala we n'okola nabo ebyensonyi. Era tewebakanga na mwana wa muwala owa mutabani wa mukazi oyo oba na mwana muwala owa muwala we, kubanga abo ba musaayi gwe gumu ng'ogwo omukazi oyo, ekyo kibi kinene. Now, in this chapter, they've given out all sorts of relationships that shouldn't happen at all in this manner, and that was one of them. Because when a woman,
you said that in Luganda, so I've just managed to get the New International Version, which I'll just
okay. Could you read
our
it,
audience,
please?
because our audience is kind of very varied and across
okay,
the world.
Please,
yeah, so
please,
it says
could you
do
read
not have,
it?
and that's Leviticus 18:17. It says do not have sexual relations with both a woman and her daughter, do not have sexual relations with either her son's daughter or her daughter's daughter. They are her close relatives. That's wickedness.
Excellent. So with all these laws, that is the only one where it says that is wickedness. You know, it adds that small print, that is wickedness. Why is it wickedness? Because it expands into the other 10 commandments, you know, the second part of the 10 commandments, which are to do with our relationships with fellow man. You know, when you do that, you have brought about totanga, thou shalt not kill, because you have created enmity between a mother and a child. You know, tobanga, do not steal. You have stolen, you know, from this mother, her child. Toyendanga, you have done that as well. So you break so many of those commandments. So that is why I think that it has this small print that is wickedness. It's not just about you sleeping with her, but there are so many other, you know, scenes that are attached to it. But then let me transpose that onto the Buganda culture. When you sleep with your wife's daughter, yeah, basically what you are doing, you are sleeping with your child, and then you are creating a situation where her mother is also sleeping with her son-in-law. Yeah, weba se nenyazalawo, you know, because the daughter is her, yeah, the girl is her daughter, so she becomes your mother-in-law essentially. So you are sleeping with her, and also you are sleeping with your mother-in-law. In the Buganda culture, that is taboo. It doesn't happen, you know. It will not happen. And also you allowing your wife to sleep with her son-in-law, you know. So when it talks about wickedness, now you can understand how much this is wicked.
That's quite interesting. I hadn't thought about it in that context. Thanks very much, Rachel, for raising that. Yes.
Yeah, so it crosses across all sorts of wickedness. And so from that verse and from how we are organized as the Africans or the Baganda, I don't know what happens in other tribes, but that is a taboo and it should not happen. And for the mother, when she discovers this error, if I was that mother and I discovered such wickedness, I would choose to lose the husband to the
and stay with your daughter.
And stick with my daughter
because the daughter then has that grandson which grandson will still remind you of the very man that you have let go.
That's the wickedness you have to live with.
That's the wickedness that you have to deal with. Thank you very much, Rachel. Stay there, please. Sheikh Suleiman Chibuka, back to you again. We didn't get the Islamic perspective. We just had about the initial reaction. We have heard from Rachel, who has actually helped us to, I think, go into two territories, not just the Christian view, but also the Buganda cultural view, which I think is sort of the culture that would resonate across much of the continent in Africa. In an African setting, a lot of it would almost be similar. What's the Islamic take on this, Sheikh Suleiman?
Yeah, Jazakallah khaira. Thanks very much, Brother KAYIRA, and also the previous speaker, which whose comment actually resonates very well with the spirit and the text of the Quran, which is the continuation of the previous messages. And upon no generation will you find some of the the fundamental core values that define a successful community and families will ever be compromised across all generations of prophethood. Now, in Islam, relationship, whether outside or inside the marriage, confines, they are all regulated, meaning that as far as Islam is concerned, what kind of people someone can marry, they are defined. And what kind of, under what circumstance can a consummation of what appears to be marriage or within the meaning of marriage is also regulated. There is no free fall for that in Islam. And Islam not only condemns and strictly forbids and prohibits any kind of consummation of marriage, sex outside marriage, but it also regulates that if someone was in marriage. Now, and this is the beauty of the divine guidance, is that it overlooks what appears to be science, because you might find out in science, as you know, in some countries, like in the United States. Before I come back to the Islamic perspective, I just want to make a little bit of a background. You find that in some communities, on some nations, they might see it okay, for example, to marry people irrespective of how close they are in blood. For example, in America, it's very well known, the debate about marriage of the first cousins or second degree cousins, and so on and so forth. The argument against is based on the scientific evidence that it can cause some kind of risks and so on and so forth. But in Islam, if you take the scientific view, it's a completely different, because it'll be a question of age. In other words, if you get a guarantee, the assurance that there is no conception of a pregnancy is going to happen, then you can't just go with anyone. In this kind of scenario, they have just, subhanAllah, narrated here, it is strongly condemned. In Islam, in Quran, chapter number 4, verse number 22 all the way to 24, categorically outlines the people whom we are not allowed. Now, we are not talking about having a casual relationship, because that is a no-go area. It's a red line. It's not a double red line. It's a triple, quadruple, red lines. You're not allowed to have any kind of relation outside, marriage. But even if, assuming it was, this Quranic verse, 4:22 to 24, categorically outlines the kind of people with whom we are not allowed to think of getting married to. And one of them, as the verse says, first of all, and marry not those women whom your fathers married, except what already has happened in the past, for surely it was ever lewdness and abomination. وَلَا تَنْكِحُوا مَا نَكَحَ آبَاؤُكُم مِّنَ النِّسَاءِ إِلَّا مَا قَدْ سَلَفَ إِنَّهُ كَانَ فَاحِشَةً وَمَقْتًا وَسَاءَ سَبِيلًا. Okay, now the tone of the verse here is to marry those whom your mothers had married to. So if the tone is addressing men, and imagine that man is someone's son, it equally applies to a girl, someone's daughter should not marry. Just as a boy is forbidden from marrying any woman who happened to be a wife of his father with a stepmom, equally so any girl will be forbidden from marriage to any man who happened to have been, a father of his wife. Now, in this scenario I've painted here, this kind of person, we call her a Rabiba. And Rabiba, as you go further down the ayah, the text that recites is a very, very long one. After that ayah, it goes on to mention which people we have been forbidden. Forbidden unto you are your mothers and your daughters and your sisters and your father's sisters and your mother's sisters and your brother's daughters and your sister's daughters and your foster mothers and your foster sisters and your mothers-in-law and your stepdaughters who are under your mother-in-law, under your women, and the stepdaughters who are your wives, who happen to be the children of your wives with whom you have consummated marriage, right? A stepdaughter, now we're talking about a father who is turning towards his stepdaughter from his wife with whom they had consummated marriage. In Islam, that is regulated. Imagine these two people were married, but they never had a chance to consummate marriage, and then they chose to break their marriage. Divorce. Divorce from the marriage. In this case, there is nothing wrong under legitimate means for this man to come and marry this daughter, because the marriage...
in the Quran, though, I think there's a specificity that might be a bit confusing. Probably you can make a little bit of clarification on that. Yeah. When the verse talks about not marrying your wife's daughters with whom they have come into the marriage with, in which case, if they didn't come into the marriage with, does that open the room that you can actually marry them? And what does that actually mean?
No, the condition is not about coming in marriage with. That child will all be...
then is what
exactly. The key point here is consummation of marriage. Even if that child is in America and you are married, you and your wife in Uganda, as long as the marriage has been consummated, any moment that child comes back, any time in life, even after divorcing, it will never be accepted. So it's very strange. And I think even in cultures, as the sister just mentioned before, giving a Christian perspective, mentioned, even in culture, yeah, especially in Africa, it is not acceptable. It is a taboo, and it is very bad, because it creates I just don't know how could any sensible, young lady think of, subhanallah, sharing, that kind of situation with a person whom he knows that is the husband of his mom. So Islamically, it is condemned with a statement of the Quran in more than one place, but equally so in the statements of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Barakallahu fikum, Sheikh Suleiman Chibuka. And Rachel, please stay there because we are going to open up the conversation now. This story, as you can imagine, someone has been saying, I think in the message, saying the volume is gone. I think Sheikh Chibuka, take your volume there. I think that's what I could hear you very well, but I think that was a message from Thalatha. But just to say that Regina Namatov says we need to go back to the basics and teach our children family values, faith, and respect. Of course, this story now has been making huge headlines. I mean, it's been a source of conversation and debate online since it came to the fore, because we have a very confused woman, unable to know which way to go. Rachel was suggesting you should rather give up the husband and, give up the husband and stick with your daughter. Leila Nalwega, you are a journalist in Uganda, and you have been following up this story online. Maybe just give us, first of all, your personal reaction, but also, how it has been playing out, out there in social media. Leila, are you there? If you can unmute yourself, please, Leila Nalwega. Hello, Leila. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Thank you very much for joining us. I know it's quite late in Uganda. It's nearly 11 o'clock. Yeah, this is a story that has been, playing a lot in social media across much of Uganda. First of all, your personal take to the story.
Isha, I'm very sorry. I've just joined, actually. I'm still following. Ryan.
Oh, Ryan has decided to participate in his own way. Okay, maybe we can give you some bit of time. It's just about the social media. This story has been playing out in social media a lot. I was just wondering, whether, how your personal reading, you saw the blurb on the story about the daughter sleeping with the stepfather. To you, how does that, come across? How does that feel? Hello, Laila. Okay, let me go to Sarah Semakura. Sarah Semakura, please, if you can unmute yourself. Sarah Semakura. And just to remind you, this is our global community conversation. It is, all hands off, and we just talk about these topics. Let's share these experiences. You never know, from your experiences, from whatever you suggest, from your advice, that might help change someone's life. Sarah Semakura, you are online. You've been hearing this conversation. What's your take on this?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi.
Personally, I really think the man is to blame, because it's something we are like going to judge who to blame, who betrayed who. I think the man is to blame, because I'm sure he was the start of all this chaos. Yeah. Sometimes the young girls, when they're young, you can't blame them, because some are seduced within the house and they are enticed with the little gifts like money, and their innocence is taken advantage of. But a girl who has now even had a child with a man, I think we have to start blaming her, because at least she can now tell right from wrong. And I'm sure the mere fact that she didn't even allow her mom to visit her house, that shows that she knew she was in wrong. Of course, you can't, study up to university and you don't know that you can't sleep with men for one, and then with your stepdad. So I think the poor woman is the victim in all this. The mother is the victim.
Part of the question, though, Sarah, is to imagine that, this is the daughter was brought into the relationship when she was just 3 years old, grew up, studied, graduated, became an architect. And with all this time that the wife was not able to see through this, women are always very good with intelligence. How did it slip through, her intelligence network, not to imagine that, something of the sort was probably happening?
Sometimes you trust someone, yeah. this is a child, you think that this man is taking like his own, given the fact that he started with her when he was young.
Yes.
Yeah, you cannot start investigating your husband within your home. Sometimes there are things that you may see later and where you are like, oh, there were telltale signs, having known what has happened after some time. But in the moment, you are like, oh, the man just loves my child. And you wouldn't really take it as something wrong is going on. So the man played on the woman's trust and ended up doing something so awful, something so forbidden, without the woman knowing. I wouldn't take the girl, I wouldn't blame the girl, like I said, at a young age, but after getting an age like 16, I think at that age, you expect the girl to know better. At least know
is
that.
It not possible then, Sarah, that the stepdaughter could have enticed the man? It doesn't take away the blame from the man, but is it not possible that the girl, probably having grown up around the man, could have enticed the man?
No, I don't think so. I don't think, maybe it could have happened. And this is when, probably when she's an adult, I will blame her, because whether you are enticed or whether you are seduced or not, there reaches a certain age when you know that what I'm doing is not right. Your conscience tells you. It's why you have to do everything in a secretive manner. Yeah. So
now,
I think
Chitunzi AM here on the chat room says, I studied with a lady at university level who got married to her stepdad and forced her mom out of the marriage. I mean, that is some of the taboos. But Sarah, growing up, I mean, this is a particular specific case that we're talking about. But having grown up, you growing up, was there any situation that ever came up that you ever heard about that? Was this the first time you're hearing anything like
yes, I have. And this was not just, this wasn't a stepdad. This was a real dad. And he ended up chasing the woman out of his house and he had more than one child, like 7 girls. But every child that reached puberty became his wife. And he never cared about the man, to the extent that the entire village knew about it. And the woman had to pack her bags and leave. And the children even also turned against her. One time, one of the child was molested by the dad. And we woke up in the morning when she was hiding in our kitchen, with these outdoor kitchens. She had slept there naked. And our parents sent us away, tried to shield the girl and not let us know what was happening. And that's when we knew that, oh, this has happened. So
but
sometimes
could the community do something? I mean, it's 7 girls, each one being abused, and nobody has really taken it upon themselves to do something about it. How much power does a parent have to that point?
I don't think, there are things you can't get into, you see. It's a family matter. People talked about it, and the man became quite embarrassed, but he didn't seem to really care much. Even young children were singing songs that were kind of mocking him and abusing him because it was a public knowledge, but he didn't care. And I think there came a time when he felt a bit small and he had to leave the village and go to another place.
What were the songs, Sarah? Do you mind sharing?
That was even us participating, singing when we used to go to the well to fetch water, and when we would see him walk past, would start singing a gang of young girls, and would run and he would throw stones to us. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know what to say, but these stories are quite common. Yeah. I've done a bit of counseling, and my main experience has been real fathers, not stepfathers, real fathers. There was a woman who had to leave her home because the man used his own daughters. They were stepchildren to that lady who was in the house, who was married. The mothers had left, and the man started sleeping with his daughters. And the poor man didn't know. You trust, this is their father. So one time she had, the woman had a daughter, a young girl who was her brother's daughter, like she was the auntie to that little girl. And he told her one time that, you know what, auntie, when you're sleeping, Haji comes and wakes so and so up, and they go in the living room. So one time I found him on top of her, and she was crying. I think they were making those sex noises, and the poor girl thought she was crying. So
I wish we had a lawyer on this, Sarah, just to sort of get feel about the Ugandan law, but by all means, I mean, this is not only a failure of the law, it is also a failure of the religion. I mean, I'm wondering, like, religious leaders being in a context like that, an entire village knows that this is going on, and none of the religious leaders has come up.
Now forget about that, which happened when I was young. And now I'm talking about an issue which happened when I was also an adult and counseling a family who had such issues. We almost took the case to court, but you know what happened? The man was rich. He paid off all those people who were involved in the case, and they dropped it.
Was that in Uganda or here?
Yeah, in Uganda.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, here you can't get away with such things. You can't. Yes. But in Uganda, you can get away with everything you can if you got money. So he silenced the woman, and he went ahead and said, if I deny this girl today, what would you do? I can't say she's not my daughter. Yeah. And this is, you are a stepmom in the house, and you also have got your own daughters. And then you worry about leaving your own children to that monster. So it's a fix. I wish I could find, if, you know, it's difficult sometimes to explain things in English, but it's much better when you say things in Uganda. In Uganda, you come out better.
No, I mean, if need be, please do, so that then we can sort of hit the nail with
kati ze kyembadde kugamba omukyalo ono yalina obuzibu bunene nnyo, yajja n'afumbirwa amaka n'asanga ng'omwami alina abaana, naye ng'abaana bano bakulu ng'aba basajja abafa abasiraamu bawasa abaana nga bakulu. Kati omwami n'atandika okwagala abaana, naye omukyala twamubuuza nti yabatandika atya, n'agamba nti omwana kubanga omukyala yanobako n'agendako ne wassenga we n'annyonnyola ensonga nti omusajja, omwana yanzuukusizza ekiro nga omusajja wange yeebaka n'abaana mu ddiiro nga neebase, kati lumu ne ŋŋenda ne mbasinkana ne mbakwata, omukazi n'anoba, omusenga we n'amugamba ogudde eddalu, oyinza okugamba nti nno bala ayinza okwebaka ku mwana we, n'amugamba senga kintu kituufu. Kati omukazi senga ono nga tayinza nakukkiriza, amugamba nti waakiri wanoonyeza ensonga endala yonna n'onoba naye ndotoowaliza musajja kintu kinene bwe kityo. This is how big an issue that can be really. Kati omusajja n'akola ki? Senga n'agaana akwata muwala we ono anobye, ne bagenda ewa maama w'oli omwana eyanoba n'ava awaka, nga n'omwana adduseewo agenze ewa maama we. Kati batuuke omwami agamba omukyala nti omwana ono alina okuddayo wali, kuba omwana yadduka nti bw'ataabeere waka wali sijja kumusomesa. Ate ng'omwami alina amaanyi, kyokka n'ono omukazi anobye. Bwe batuuka ne batuuka mu nsonga okuzoogera, omwana n'agamba nti taata yaŋŋamba nti bwe mba mwagala nga mwagalira ddala, nina okumulaga nti mwagala. Omwana yagamba, n'amubuuza nti ng'omulaga otya, nti nanjigiriza ekyokkola mulage nti mwagala. Kati n'agaananga ono stepmom n'okugenda okulambula abaana ku ssomero, nga ye yagenda n'alambula omwana ng'amuggyayo oluusi n'alowooza nti omwana mulwadde, mutwala ku check-up n'amutwala mu loogi n'amukozesa. Ate ng'omusajja talina nsonyi, kati n'amala okwagala oyo, ate n'amala n'abaana abato abagenda baddako. Kati senga wono omukyala n'amugamba ti kati naawe ozadde abaana ababo, kati ono akyali ku bano baana bajja, kati gwolekewo ababo obalekedde ki? Kuba tojja kubasobola balabirira. This is how people can get into a corner nga tamanyi kyakola. Nesagala kutwalira abantu budde, naye nkulaga nti bino ebintu biri real.
This is a serious issue, Sarah.
Yeah. Kiri real. Omusajja n'akozesa ssente kuba we wanted to, as social services and counselors, we would try to take the case forward. Naye tubeera frustrated. Bwe twagenda mu nsonga z'abafida, abakyala batula mu offices zaabwe baagala ssente. Omusajja n'abawanga ssente, n'otuuka okugenda nga weewuuba, tolina nawe kyakola, ate nawe olina emirimu gyemirala. Then you get frustrated and you have to leave it. Naye ng'omusajja buli mwana akulamu, ate nga musajja mukulu, ate musajja musiraamu, amufuna engeri gy'amubuzaabuzaamu, n'akozesa abaana be.
Oh dear. Yeah. Barakallahu fikum, Sarah. Stay there, please. We are continuing the conversation. Just to remind you, this is Calm Let's Talk with me, KASSIM KAYIRA, live on 75 W Radio and live on Umma Connect on YouTube and on Zoom, as well as Facebook. Well, I've seen a couple of people here. I'd like to hear your own take. I'd like to hear from a man, because so far we've heard from Sarah. Very powerful submission there. Abubakar Galiwango, please, if you are free, can you I'd like to hear your take on this. Gambo, quite strong, very powerful regarding the story that we are dealing with, but also the fact that we have a dilemma here is a problem that spreads across, and sometimes the laws haven't helped. Abu Bakr, are you there?
Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, Abu Bakr.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa
Yes,
barakatuh.
thank you very much for joining the conversation. You have had, first of all, your reaction hearing this story. What does that make you feel?
It's really so sad to hear such stories happening in our societies. But from my side, I've heard the stories. I've been hearing the stories, but from far, I've never knew someone that experienced that in his life or her life or in the family. But it's really very unfortunate.
What sort of advice would you give to this woman, but also in the case that Sarah has just raised about a father sleeping with his own children from a previous wife? What sort of advice would you give to this mother who has found herself in a difficult situation? Her daughter has been sleeping with her husband. Who do you get rid of? What would you advise the woman to do?
I would just refer to what Islam really says about the adolescents, how we need to handle the adolescents, especially when they grow, when they reach their puberty, separating the rooms for the children, girls and boys, and also since it still happens in our communities. So even I think the wives and the mothers have to be vigilant, especially when they have stepdads and daughters around. So
that's the reality that we are dealing with now. Lots of breakups of relationships at the moment, and as a result, you end up having a lot of women moving with children into new relationships, which means it just creates another difficult scenario. But I think Chance K here is saying, Barakallahu fikum. Chance K, you're saying before we make any judgment, we should look at the root cause. What is causing that? Chance, let me just put it to you then. What do you think is causing that? You don't want us to throw the blame game. Welcome to the conversation. Yes, wa alaikum salam.
Yes, KK, sorry, I have some code, but I think before we make any judgment, we should be able to analyze what could be the cause. And the cause, you may find that it may be within the internal settings, which generates the moral decay. For instance, a woman may get into another marriage when she has elderly daughters, and there is no connection, like parental connection, with the husband, with the new husband. And with our new style of dress, like Patra, you find they're watching a movie with their stepdad in a Patra on a couch, legs up, such scenarios. Yeah, it won't surprise me if it depends how the man's ability to control himself in such a scenario. You may find that I won't be surprised if the man goes away with one of the stepdaughters. But also,
but Chance, if you think about it, I mean, in the specific case that we are talking about, this daughter was brought in when she was 3 years old. She grew up around the man. Basically, if it was even about changing her diapers or whatever, he had done that. The daughter grew up in his hand, in his homestead. In other words, this might not necessarily apply. Let's start with that one, and then we'll delve to the bigger one, which is about the daughters who come in older and they just live the kind of free lifestyle.
I think both parents didn't take their role, responsibility to nurture their daughter. You may find that the mom had some misunderstandings, or she was doing something behind their married wedlock, and the daughter knew about it. That's what I'm assuming. And once she was able to reveal it to the dad, and girls are easily affectionate to their dads than their moms. That's what I would assume.
So what sort of advice then would you give to this woman who is in a dilemma?
I don't think breaking up solves the scenario, really. I know such a scenario is a laughing stock to the bigger community. But if you have kids running away because your daughter has fathered a kid with your man, it doesn't solve the situation.
But how do you live with the shame, though? Is the shame a bigger weight or load onto the family than the breakup, than the shame that comes with the breaking up?
But breaking up, it doesn't take the shame away. And who you look at the bigger picture of the family responsibility. Who is going to look after your kids? No.
Okay, that's a view, definitely. That's definitely a view. Regina, I'd like to hear. Speak to Chance. You've had Chance's position. Take him on.
Hello.
Hello, Regina. Welcome to this conversation.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity. I may mix Lugandan and English.
No problem. I think other than many of you will be able to follow.
Yeah. I kind of was logged out, so I missed the initial introduction to the topic. Having said that,
I just wanted you to respond to Chance. You've had Chance, the argument that he makes that breaking up is not a solution, but I've been seeing you as well, sort of, raising some aspects within the chat room, and that's why I sort of wanted to, first of all, hear your own take on what Chance has just said. Do you agree with
I think obviously this topic is very opinionated, and I speak based on my own values and beliefs. Shame or not shame, it is a tough one, but I don't think, personally, staying in such a broken, I'll use the word broken, and this is because of my values. Staying in it, how can I continue to function? What is expected? Is there love? And to me, technically, there's no love within that family setting. I could be wrong, that maybe the person who have had that experience, what they call love is different. Because if your child is being abused, because that is a form of abuse, it depending on what age, and then you allow it to continue. Because for me, staying in it is kind of confirming that the act is acceptable within the family values or beliefs. So maybe in terms of advice, or if one finds yourself in it, personally, I will leave.
You would leave?
Although I would leave, even though it will not take away what had happened or the damage. But I will live based on my values and expectations. Yes.
Chance, speak to Regina. You have the mics, both of you. You have your mics open. I'd like you to talk to each other, because you seem to be standing on different poles on this. And our religious guiders are here. I'll bring them in shortly to sort of help us transition now. Yes, Chance, speak to Regina. You've had Regina's position.
To me, I find that life is very funny, that living, to me, doesn't solve the problem. You need to carry your cross. There are measures there are avenues where you can, as long as you accept that this was wrong, you can go into a rehab. There may be a psycho problem with the man. It's all about.
Okay,
so you can respond, Regina.
If there is a psycho, because we are assuming, we don't know, if there is a psycho problem with a man, am I staying to help resolve that psycho problem? And has that man accepted? Is he aware of his own actions? Is he aware? Is he willing to change? And this could have been, it wasn't a one-off. I don't think a one-off incident. It must have been occurrence, behavior that is not part of the society. It's not accepted. So, I mean, the damage has been done. I hear you on that. However, if I don't believe in that act, how will I stay and continue to support my daughter, who possibly is going through challenges herself? Because there must be a form of challenges that child is going through, and she has given a birth to a child as well. What do I expect my grandson or my granddaughter to grow or to see? And we talk about social behavior. Monkey see, monkey do. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Regina and Chance. And remember, of course, you can join the conversation. We are talking about, well, this betrayal, but in this particular sense, stepdaughter ends up sleeping with stepfather, and mother is in a dilemma about what to do next. Chair Chibuk, I would like to bring you in here just to sort of bridge this gap, and I'll come to Rachel next after you. You've had the conversation so far from the audience, just in terms of their take on the situation. Where do you think we are failing as a society? What is leading us to this particular situation? Why do we find ourselves in this particular down this particular route? You are muted. You're still right. Sorry, you are muted. Yes, go ahead.
Exactly. It depends on how far back you want to take it in history. But my belief is, as the saying goes, that naturally human beings to err is natural, right? We always have that natural instincts of making a choice. And let me just be a little bit categorical here that in all faith, the faith of Islam, we believe that a sin is different from a mistake, right? When you make a mistake, of course, chances are that you do not intend to infringe on the right or to abuse the law or the code of practice. But a sin is something that you are always reprimanded for when you made a choice well knowing of the consequences of that. And hardly anyone commits such a thing unless he doesn't know that it is bad. And that you could see the kind of the secrecy and the discreetness with which they kept it all the way to the girl bearing a child. So it is natural. We are not talking about something that cannot happen, because we are human beings. We are influenced by the circumstances around us. And where these two people committed this sin, depends on what time did this child started getting involved in this. If she was groomed at a very early stage, then probably, even if she later on during her maturity, she committed it, it might have been a consequence of this, of a trend that was perpetuated by this abusive and pedophilic, father. But it is natural. So both of them might be responsible for that action. But what I see is, I think, I don't know which specific area should I talk about. Let me just say this.
Well, it's just how society, how we have ended up there. Yeah, go ahead, please. But I would like you to guide us, because we wanted to bring in Rachel as well. And I can see Sophia Mrangwa's hand is up. Maybe she might have a question that might be good for you to answer. But yes, go ahead, please.
So understanding that this is natural, to make a mistake, to commit a sin is natural, because we've got forces around us. We talk about shaitan and also our own failure. The shaitan sends the invitation, but you make your own choice because it is wrong. So it's recognition of this weakness that within us, that faith, and we all know our faith and many faiths do put in place what we can call automatic stabilizer, checks and balances, so that with the intention of mitigating, you can never ever eradicate for good, just mitigating the chances of committing and falling a prey, or being victim of this kind of situation.
So when you talk about the difference between a sin and a mistake,
a sin is
one a compound of the other. If you make several mistakes over time, does that constitute a sin then?
Well, I think by definition, a mistake is something that you intend to do, but you do not intend to cause any harm. And I'll give you an example. Me and you are sitting together, right? And maybe we all have the same kind of mobile phones, or we intend, for example, to go and play, for example, archery, right? So you aim at, for example, hitting a certain target, and then by accidentally the arrow strays away and hits someone by the leg. So it was a mistake, but it was you never ever intended. You intended to play the game, but you never intend to infringe on the right to harm another person. So that is a mistake. And in Islam, no one is going to be held accountable for that because the intention to harm was not there. I don't think these things happen out of by mistake. They are not accidents. They did it deliberately, knowing that what they are doing is wrong. Okay, unless one of them was coerced. If the girl was coerced initially, then as a result of what you would call the Stockholm syndrome, she ends up, succumbing to it and then keeps a secret. But where they both might have acted willingly and knowingly, then of course they've got to be responsible for that. But what I was going to say is that in Islam, there are some automatic stabilizers that have been put in place, at least to mitigate, to reduce the potential chances of this kind of behavior happening. And as a result of that, you look at a very simple example. When Islam educates us to raise up the children, we are told that we've got to educate our children to start, to pray, for example, to observe the daily prayer at the age of 7, and then, get them to be more serious with it at the age of 10. And at that particular moment, we are advised to separate them in their dwellings. So if you have a boy and a girl, make sure at the age of 10, you separate them. And all that is minimized because you don't know at what stage, how early this can start getting this kind of arousal. When it comes to adult, the Prophet ﷺ and Islam, encourages and reminds us that to ensure that still the door to committing that kind of, to end up that kind of eventuality is reduced, because both of them are very regretful and they're remorseful and they can't help it. Some people can maybe have a thick skin, so well, I don't care. But deep down their heart, they know there is something that has gone wrong. The society is looking at them, as the Muliabu tells us, Sister Sarah mentioned, and they're not happy with that. When it comes to adult, it is not recommended. The Prophet ﷺ said that it is not permissible for a man or a woman, okay, if he's really conscious and accountable and responsible for their action, that one day they will stand to account for their behavior, that he should, maintain some kind of, be in a closed area by themselves without any part, what we call the mahram, a relative. And the whole idea about this is to make sure that we minimize, the chances of all these things. I mean, there's so many other guidances on that. But regarding the issue of what should be done, whether they should, separate or not, and I think in this case, both, especially the victim here happens to be the mother of the daughter, she has an upper hand to decide what she needs to do. And whichever way she decides to, I don't think she deserves to be condemned, because we may look at the situation, might try to empathize, but we'll never ever know how much she deeply got hurt. And it is within her own right to say that, look, it doesn't matter, I have to live. But it can be a very difficult decision, especially where she may have had other children within that family. She might be caught between the hard place and the rock. Should I move away, either leave my children with their, abusive father? Should I take my children? I was going to take care of them. And these are kind of situations. To avoid all these, mechanisms have to be in place to minimize all unnecessary, situation that can.
Now that she's already in here, Sheikh Chibuka, now that she's already in that situation, you're saying the decision will be almost down to her based on her assessment. Would there be any religious guidance as to what should happen in a situation like this?
Yeah, this is what I would say. I think the first line of of response, I would say, is not to to dissolve the relationship, but you can understand how difficult it can be. If I take you back at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, a woman, one of the companions of the Prophet, came to the Messenger and said, "Oh, my Messenger of Allah, I have no problem. I have no personal grudge about my husband. Physically, financially, he looks after me and everything's okay. But I don't feel there's any chemistry between me and him. Just a matter of chemistry. And I think that if we continue, I may, something wrong might happen. Either I may say a word that will hurt his feelings and so on and so forth." So In this case, Islam makes it that you are not supposed to be in a bondage, a marriage bondage, where you feel you are not satisfied, you're not happy. But it's not the first line of response. The first line of response will be arbitration. And if it is a one-off, of course, we are all sinners. We are all potential sinners, but the best of the sinners, he who reflects on their behavior. And, with a sense of responsibility, recognize that he hurt people and makes the initial step to move away from that and rebuild your relationship, because by the end of the day, it is the best thing. Marriage is going to be given a chance to thrive and rebuild, because it will never always be a bed of roses. There are always going to be ups and downs, and no one is safe from that. Whether they are prophets or kings and royals, everyone goes through that. But sometimes it depends on how hard someone is and how much ready he is to move on and accommodate that heart and compromise and then open a new chapter. If she happens to be at the end of her book, there's no more pages to open, then probably if she chooses to move out, Islamically it's okay, but all options have got to be weighed in.
Thank you very much. Sophia Murangwa, your hand is up, and then I'll bring in Mkungu Rachel to come and give her position also as well on this particular perspective. It is quite an interesting but difficult conversation that we seem to be having, but one that should be had given where we are at, especially with divorce rates now increasing on a high, on almost a steady flow, but at the same time, people leaving to go into new relationships with children from previous relationships. So it might not have happened to you. God forbid, it might happen to you. Sophia Murangwa, you have the mic.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa
barakatuh.
Yeah, just I'm saying, Sheikh KAYIRA, we don't know even whether this man started sleeping with the child when she was still young. We don't know about that. This man looks like an opportunist, a pedophile, and he shouldn't, is for sure. If this girl came when she was 3 years old, that makes the girl had the man's daughter, because I grew up with my stepdad, and I'm actually lost for words, because how could he sleep with a girl? I'm sure it might have started earlier on. We might blame the girl or this and this, but he should have known better. This is the daughter. And at the same time, maybe the woman trusted this man with the child, knowingly this is the dad, and he might have been doing something, abusing the child.
Sophia, you said you grew up with the stepfather. Is that correct?
Yes, I did.
Yes. And how did you relate with him in a way that then might help others who probably find themselves in a similar situation?
Yeah, because culture-wise and even respect, because my dad, in fact, I call him my dad. I don't call him my stepdad or anything.
Yes.
We grew up with him, and he had his own children, but we took him as our dad. We'd never, I know nowadays people are wearing provocatively and that, but when I was growing up with him, I didn't know I knew, or actually I was told when I was about 9, that is your stepdad. But we used to respect him. Like here, we people are saying they share the rooms and that. We don't know about this situation, whether they were sharing houses, rooms and that. We used to have our own bedrooms. And at the same time, respect comes in. And if you know this is your dad, if it does try to trespass and abuse the trust, you tell your parent. This is what I don't understand. And my dad, he was the most loveliest man, because he treated us like children and your children. We didn't have that this close relationship that you go jump on your dad, do this and this, but he treated us like children, in a Ugandan culture way. So basically what I don't understand, what possessed this man? He has abusive ideas in his head to start sleeping with this young kid, because the kid came when she was 3 years old. That makes this girl.
Paint the picture. You say that if a situation like that happened, then it would be about reporting to your mom as a first point of call.
Definitely, but I don't think yes, I would definitely my mom.
But you've had a situation. I think Sarah Semakula raised an important issue where sometimes there is denial. The wife, your mother, for example, you go and report, and they are so much in denial that actually might end up getting beaten up for even reporting that.
Then I go to my grandmother.
I beg your pardon?
I had my grandmother. She was. I started living with my stepdad when I was about 7. So when I was a baby, because my dad passed away when I was young, I never saw my dad. So I tell my grandmother, and if nobody believes me, I just move out of the house. No, this is, I don't know, this is unacceptable behavior. And at the same time, we're not throwing blames or anything. The man should have known better. Because if he...
What advice would you give now to this woman who is in a serious dilemma?
Yeah, she has to, the relationship with the daughter has to stay there because this is her blood and she will always be there. But with the man, I don't know whether I can even, I would want even to live with him anymore if I was the one in that situation. I would just comfort my daughter, reassure her, and that's it. I don't think I can deal with such a person.
Thank you
because
very much,
the
Sophia.
trust is gone. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Sophia. Now, Rachel, to you, you've been hearing this, hit back, hit in, hit out.
Yes.
So far, let's get your take.
I mean, there's quite a lot of issues that have been raised. One of them I would like to pick up on is the dress code in the home. We tend to think that everything foreign is good for us.
Oh, your line is dropping.
Your
line is dropping there. I think you're on the point of dressing. Sarah says girls dressing is in a provocative way. As a father, you need to do is talk to your wife about such inappropriate behavior. You don't sleep with your daughter or stepchild. Your line was a bit breaking up, Rachel. Hope it's getting better now. Hello? Hi, Rachel. Maybe try to disconnect and reconnect again while I bring in Sarah Semakula, I think. Oh, it's back. Sorry, we couldn't hear much of what you said. The line was dropping. Go ahead, Rachel. Oh, did she drop? Okay, Sarah, if you can come back while we wait for Rachel to come back.
You are asking us what advice we should give to the mother or the wife
in this difficult situation. Rachel, I will come to you now. It looks like your line is back. Yes.
We should take into consideration that girl or the daughter has now children. And I think one of them has to stay in the relationship and the other has to abort. Because you are not going to have your daughter as your co-wife or mamujao. What about the children? What are they going to call you, grandma or stepmom? The relationship's now very complicated and decisions have to be made. So I'm sure the man has now decided to be with the girl, and that's what is going to happen.
Well, the thing is, the wife hasn't given him a child. The stepdaughter has given him a son, and is even pregnant with the second.
That's exactly what I'm talking about, KAYIRA. You don't have any child in that relationship. It's best you walk out.
But how do you now stay in that relationship? I mean, the relationship between the mother and the daughter, how does that get sustained in case she decides?
The thing is, it will be hard at the moment, but I'm sure the mom and the daughter will come to terms. They will build a new relationship with time, because this is your blood. You're not going to stay away from your child forever.
As far as the US is saying, problem is the girl might decide to stay with the man instead, and that's the father of her kids. It's absurd, but the mother loses either way.
See?
Do you agree?
I would agree. You don't even need anyone to tell you that you're out. Definitely you're out. This is not a relationship for you anymore. The mere fact that your daughter has given birth or is going to have 2 children from your husband, that's a gone relationship. You can't stay. How are you going to love him anyway?
But it might even be much more difficult as well for the two to stay together. I mean, stepdaughter and stepfather, to maintain the relationship, because it might have been easy having to steal away moments, but once it becomes official, then it might become a bit difficult.
You can be amazed by how dry, if I may use the word, translate directly, how people can be. They can stay on. Yeah, Bakaru.
And how do you visit now as grandmother now? How do you visit your daughter who took your husband?
This is something you have to live with, You have to find a way of living with it. You might stay away from her for some time, but you're not going to stay away forever. We mothers are so forgiving. Yeah. And we always put the blame to the men anyway.
Regina is saying they can consider family counseling and work things out, to which Hasfaka says they are evil. Rachel, I think you're back now. Your line might have gotten better. Rachel?
Hi.
Yeah, sorry about the earlier bit. We could hardly hear you. You're saying you're picking up points. Yes.
Okay. I don't know how much you heard, but I was emphasizing on dress code at home.
Yes.
And how our daughters should be guided to dress around their fathers, their brothers, their cousins who are of the opposite sex. And I don't think that in this society we live in is emphasized enough, because children are encouraged to wear anyhow, any sort of clothing when they are out in schools. For example,
sometimes it starts with the mothers themselves, Rachel.
Exactly. So even
it becomes difficult to provide guidance when you are decently dressed yourself.
Yes. So we mothers have to take charge of what we are teaching our daughters to be. And also you find in some cases there's too much trust between mother, daughter, and and fathers. I will not use the word stepfather, but it is what it is. Some mothers tend to ask their daughters to act on their behalf. Twalira kitaawe emmere, twalira agenda oteekeko amazzi ga kitaawe, agenda anaabe, gatwaleyo mu kinaabiro. Those sort of things, those sort of jobs that the mother should be doing herself, finding herself in a position where she's sending her daughter in the lion's den. And then eventually in the situation in the case study that we are looking at, you find that you are creating an atmosphere where this child is going to be groomed into something else. For example, where there's no children that have been born by the mother, the father can start deceptively telling the girl that your mother has given you to me because she's gone past the age of producing children, and because she does not want to leave, she has decided that you will be my wife, and she doesn't mind. Because if a child is born and resembles the man, how could the mother not recognize that, and how could she not ask any questions, unless there was some sort of deception that is so blinding, unless there was a brother to the father that was coming to the home who looked exactly like, so how could she not recognize that? So there is deception.
Rachel, on your dress code issue, I think Ryan here says, let the kids be kids. Dress code, they are still kids. They are allowed to enjoy their childhood. You would disagree?
Well, enjoying your childhood, not in a grooming way, in a respectable way. We all enjoyed our childhood, but we didn't mean that we had to wear leggings and, those sort of type of, clothing. We enjoyed our childhood, and we played many games. So it is what it is. You need to see where the risks are and try to control them. I mean, the verse that we started with goes on to say that not even her grandchildren. So you are not allowed to sleep with the daughter, but not even her grandchildren. That is how extensive that the wickedness, to stop the wickedness, should go. So with that comes the dress code. I mean, in Islam, you are lucky because you've got your dress code, which covers the entire body. But not everyone has that, that privilege or respects that sort of, dress code around in our homes. But I think it does help somehow to control the risks that are involved. Sheikh Chibuk has talked about what should be done afterwards. And in the Christian setting, we've got a verse, sorry, I don't know where it is, but it does say that do not grieve the Holy Spirit. Yes, it was about making a mistake and then a sin. Do not grieve the Holy Spirit. When you know that what you're doing is wrong, then that is when you start sinning. Yeah, and that is grieving the Holy Spirit, because it is the Holy Spirit that reminds you that what you're doing is wrong and you need to stop what you're doing. If you do not, then you are sinning. And that in the Bible says that it is unforgivable sin. Every other sin is forgivable, But if you sin knowingly, then that is unforgivable sin. So for the daughter to go to the point of hiding her errors, it means that she was in the territory of the unforgivable sin. And therefore, for the mother, she has to give up this man. But obviously she cannot give up her daughter kubanga ye yalina ekirira ky'omwana we. Omusajja takirina, you know. So she cannot, you can't cut that cord, you know, you cannot cut the connection with your children. There was someone who mentioned about mental health. The mental health of the man, obviously there's an issue there which hasn't been explored. And I think someone else shared a story where a man was sleeping with his own children, one after the other. Again, that is sick. The man is sick, you know. He doesn't know that he's sick, but the man is sick. And the entire village just to watch him do that and just, you know, leave him to continue it also means that the entire village is sick. Because this trauma is not just in this home. It has now been transferred into the community and has become acceptable. It's wrong. Because
it's actually difficult, Rachel, to imagine that an entire village, not just the religious leaders, not the authorities, the government authorities, for them to, because this was known, this was public knowledge. Yes. People knew about it. The children sang about it going to the well to fetch water. And yet nobody did anything about it. I mean, it sort of defeats logic in this particular sense.
It does. And I think in the old days in Buganda, when such cases were to, you know, to appear in society, they would they would chase you from the village, not just chase you from the village, but they would
Rachel, my wife is just saying here, it's like Musezi, because everybody in the village knows the person is Musezi and they can't do anything about it.
No, this is beyond that. You know, they just chase you from the village. They cut down your plantations, the Matoke plantation, and they burn down your house just to show you that what you're doing is unacceptable. And those children should be replaced in other homes and be protected. You cannot leave an entire family to be
Thank you very much, Rachel. Stay there. It's 9:24, just 36 minutes to the top of the hour. And I thank you very much for all your contributions so far. This is the Global Community Conversation. The program is Come Let's Talk with me, KASSIM KAYIRA, live on 75W Radio and on Umma Connect via Facebook, via YouTube, and on Zoom. Nuriat Nabiwande, I can see you. It's a new name on the program. I'd like to hear your take on this particular conversation so far. Nuriat, are you there? Can you unmute yourself, please? Nuriat. Let's go to Nuriat. Are you there? Okay, Bakia, I've seen you getting surprised and shocked about what was going on. What's your take on this, Bakia? Hello, Bakia, can you unmute yourself? Maybe not in the position to speak. I'll just go to Hasfa Kasuja in the United States. Hasfa, welcome to the conversation. You've been hearing this, and I'm sure you are fuming wherever you are at. Who are you fuming with? Is it the daughter? Is it the stepfather? Is it the is it the mother?
I cannot say it's the mother, because she wanted a father figure in her daughter's life. And she got married, and because the father of the child had denied responsibility, she got married, and she brought a father figure in this daughter's life. So she was trying to do the right thing. But what she did not know, that the man she brought in her daughter's life was actually a predator. That's what I would call him, because I don't know how you can raise a child and then prey on them. One second. She actually went back there. So I'm sorry. So I don't understand how you can, he's a predator. That's what I'll call him. You can't raise a child. You take them to school. They're young. You see them grow, and then you still prey on them. you know, it's sick, it's sickening, it's disgusting. So
what sort of protective measures could you take? I mean, you get into a relationship, it breaks down, you get remarried, and in getting remarried, you come with your children from a previous relationship. What would you do to ensure that something like this does not happen?
That is a very tough thing. Kwanga want to work with Shikeke. That you never know. But you as a woman, you're trying to do the right thing.
Yes, so what's the right thing? What would you do?
But number one, people talked about dressing. If you have been in a setting with a stepfather in a home, like Hajat Sarah said, dressing is very important. People say kids have the childhood. So much these days. You can't see them wearing hot pants, even around their own fathers, or very short things around their fathers. So number one would be to watch their dressing. But number two, protect your child. Look out for the telltale signs. Sometimes they might not be, you might see them. Sometimes things are but sometimes there are certain things we might neglect. So you always take caution. It's no matter what, this man has raised this child, always at the back of your mind, you know that it is not their biological child. You never know, anything can happen. So you always guard them no matter what. That's what I think.
Okay. Thank you very much, Asfa. Sarah Musa, if you're there. Sarah Musa, if you can unmute yourself, please. Sarah Musa.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to this global community conversation.
I've just joined.
You've just joined. Oh my God. Yes. And what's your take? What do you think, having seen the story as flagged? A woman in dilemma, stepdaughter, or rather her daughter slept with her husband. So stepfather sleeps with stepdaughter.
And did she know that was the stepdaughter, her mother's husband?
Yes, she came into the relationship when she was only 3 years old, when the mother remarried. And the reason we are saying this is because globally now, we've got so many divorce rates or breakups that are happening. Women are moving into new relationships with children, girl children in this particular instance. How do you protect them, against the possibility of, ending up in a scenario where a stepfather sleeps with a stepdaughter?
Well, it's hard. I think it needs prayers, but on a practical side, I think it's adab. The relationship at home, the openness, the conversation, having that conversation that this is your stepdad, setting boundaries. I personally come from a polygamous family, a huge family, and even my own brothers were never allowed to come out in front of the sisters in shorts. We were never allowed to go and serve male visitors. The boys will go give them water. So I think the foundation at home, the setting, having that is very, very important. Like setting the boundaries. My brothers would come, like 2-3 of them in the girls' room, we sit, we talk. But the older you grow, you start setting boundaries at home. I know, like, this is not acceptable, the separation. I think, and going back to Islam, I think really that plays a very, very big role. But I think it's important for parents to bring their kids, like Afsa said, talk to your kids, but make your kids your friend. Feel your kids can come to you with anything. I think that's also very important. Sometimes parents are in denial. I have a cousin, she came to a marriage with a big child, and we would always tell her, your husband, this is a girl, there's so many people come in your home, male, this is not good. And she gets angry. She used to take the approach like, we're wishing ill to her daughter, but she's our child too. So, I mean, a couple of times we actually snapped. We had it out with her. I'm like, what will you do if that's the approach you're taking? Even if something happened, that girl won't feel safe to come to you.
Yes.
So it's a very complicated thing, but honestly, I think the setting at home everything begins at home.
What sort of advice would you give now to this particular situation? I mean, actually, we're only talking about the wife, the mother, as advice to the mother, but even the daughter probably needs advice. What sort of advice would you give to these three different participants in this particular saga, to the husband, to the daughter, and to the mother? What sort of advice would you have?
After the fact, it has happened. I have no advice. This is beyond me.
Okay, thank you very much, Sarah Musa. Rashida, you have the mic. Rashida.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. You've had the conversation.
Seriously, I might be in the same footsteps as the lady who's literally just spoken.
Yes.
I think this is beyond, it's beyond me, because I think, like they say, you forgive, but unfortunately, I think the mother may need to walk away, because I think this is way
walk to where?
That's a very good one. Literally find different ways of life, I suppose, because I think this is way too big. There's going to be serious resentment. And I think sometimes we don't see what our internal, the subconscious mind is not literally going to tell you what's going on with you, but just the mere actions that is going to be coming from you is going to speak volumes. And I think because we don't realize that actually what we have around us is more the behavior, what we portray, even just what the mere look that you're giving to a person is going to speak volumes. I think it's probably going to cause more harm than good, because mother will end up saying things that she may live to regret for the rest of her life. And I think unfortunately it's going to be difficult unless the girl walks away from the man. Then I don't think there's ever going to be a solution in terms of playing happy families forever and after. I don't think that.
I actually have this feeling, Rashida, that the fact that they used to play it behind closed doors, they managed to hide it so well, at least thus far. The fact that they have been found out actually makes it very difficult to continue with the relationship. I have this strong feeling that even if the mother walked away, which is the natural sort of incline for many that are suggesting, especially from the ladies in the conversation, you find that even the relationship between the stepfather and stepdaughter might not even exist. So if the mother walks away, daughter walks away, and stepfather walks away, what do we have? There are children involved. So there's one child and another one on the way involved. How do we deal with that? How do we bring those back together?
Literally, I think as you're speaking, I'm getting even, I think I'm getting a bit, I'm boiling. Purely
yes, because we can easily talk about walking away, but now I'm imagining a sort of a triangular walk away.
I hear you.
Daughter walks away.
True.
I
think the man should leave. I think the man should leave the picture. End of. Seriously, I think the man should leave the picture. End of. And unfortunately, the kids will always ask where is dad or where is granddad. But I think the man should be castrated. I mean, that's really to an extreme. But I think the man should move, because at the end of the day, what on earth? This child has come into your hands from the age of 2. I work in a very different setting in my career. And I think when we go down this route, and I think it probably just triggers me purely because of the type of job I do. Because
what type of job do you do?
So I'm in forensics. So I'm in forensics. We deal with victims, people who've been subject to sexual violence. And actually, for me, this speaks volumes, because I'm just sort of thinking, is this man actually a groomer? Is he, if he's done it to this woman or to this girl, chances are that he's probably done it before, or he could do it again, even if he walks away from their family. But I think the easiest option is for the man to walk away. And for mother, unfortunately, abazadde, we end up kusonyiwa. Kubango oli aba mwana wo. So really, I think the best thing is for the man to walk so that areme kutawanya the whole family.
The entire process of healing. Well, Ryan says here, mom needs to leave the situation, do her healing, and they came way in the homestead. The daughter will find her way in time. That's not your view. Rashida?
What did you say that mom needs to?
No, it was a comment in the chat room from Ryan who says mom needs to leave the situation. You're saying dad needs to leave the situation. But Ryan says mom needs to leave the situation, do her healing, and they came way in the homestead. The daughter will find her way in time. You don't think that would be a solution?
To be honest, I think something has got to give. Unfortunately, something has got to give. Okay. And what is going to give is either the man walks away, or the woman walks away. Unfortunately, it's a painful situation, but it's got to come to that, to that ending that someone has to walk. One of the elders has to walk. Of course, she's at fault. Of course, abakulu, I think okujjamu wano okuvaawo.
No problem. Rashida, thank you very much. I can see Ryan, and then Hasfa Kasuja, I'll come to you. Ryan, to you, please. Go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Can people stop give excuses for this man? The man is a monster. He's a monster who needs prosecution. He needs... Is there an Islamic way to punish this man at all? Is there anything we could do to... Can he go to jail forever?
Fantastic.
Stop excusing this, the excuse of clothing, what?
Assuming he's Muslim.
Have to dress as they can. They're kids. They need to dress as kids. But how could he even give an excuse for this man? This man is a monster. I'm so sorry to say that, but I don't even have words to say to this man. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. It's a question we'll put now in terms of punishment. We've been speaking about the crime, but we have not spoken about the punishment. Crime and punishment will come to Sheikh Chibuka, and will come to Kumburetu as well, to get a feeling from the religious, the punishment side of things, now that we would need to absorb the situation. Hasfa Kasuja, your hand was up, and I'll come to 75 W Radio. I think it's Baker. Yes, Hasfa, you have the mic.
I just wanted to make a comment about oops, give me 1 second. Sister Sophia has mentioned that, and people make comments about mothers who don't want to raise their kids alone because there are monsters out there. I think we shouldn't take away from the fact that there's also good men out there, or good mothers out there raising children, because these women also prey on boys. They also prey on boys. But despite what this man did, there's also a lot of good men out there who are also raising stepchildren without being predators. So I think we shouldn't, what we shouldn't take away from the story is that all men are monsters, or all stepfathers are going to be monsters. But in fact,
I think that would be stereotyping, because we have already heard about stepdads who have been fantastic. I think Sophia Murangwa did mention stepdad was fantastic.
I know she did, and I think at the same time she also said they shouldn't say something about mothers who want to raise their kids alone.
Which was a bit contradicting.
Yeah, which is a bit contradicting, but there's, I mean, at the end of the day, Allah yatukweke mioyo. Sometimes you see the red flags, and sometimes you don't. Yeah. And there's a lot of men out there that are really raising other men's kids, or as stepfathers, and they're really, really good fathers.
Hasfa, it looks like Sophia wants to talk to you. Sophia has had you, and she wants to respond back straight away. Sophia, go ahead. Speak to Hasfa.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi
wa alaikum salam.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi.
No, I didn't say that. I just said they're nice people, but that was a message I copied from someone. But I'm just
sorry.
So I didn't say that. There are nice people out there.
Yeah.
And we just need to trust people. But before you trust this person, you have to know them very well.
because even
Yes.
boys can be abused, not only
Yes,
girls.
boys. Yes, boys are also abused in the homes. Absolutely, you're
I think we have
absolutely right.
concentrated on the girls now because there was a child involved and it looked so seriously incest or incestuous. But we know without a doubt that there have been cases of boys who have been abused in this particular.
Yes. Thank you.
75W radio. I think that's Baker. Go ahead, please. Oh, sorry. I think I muted you again, trying to unmute you. 75, go ahead. 75W radio. I think that's Baker.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
This is a very complex and hard kind of like topic to kind of like talk about, but this is something that happens in our community. And unfortunately, I know a case where actually the mother was like, don't say anything, you know, to keep it as a secret so that they don't put shame to the family. You know, these issues do happen, but we keep them within, you know,
under lock and key.
Under lock, because you think they're going to put shame to the family, or, you know, so these people that commit these crimes, they get to literally stay in the community. And people don't get.
Becca, you are saying it was the mother pushing the daughter not to say anything about what had happened.
Yes, about what not to happen.
Yes.
So we need to create opportunities, or even we need to find how. Oh my goodness, Mo.
Are you all right, Becca? Hello, Becca. Let me hope you are not driving. Okay, we'll wait for Becca to get back. I don't know what has happened. I just heard, oh my God. Let me hope no dangers happened there. Sheikh Chibuka, I'll bring you back in here because I think Becca had just started raising an issue that I think delves into another territory, actually another controversial subject. We have concentrated on stepfathers who have come into homes or got married to their mothers, but we've had other cases. For example, there's a very familiar case of people, for example, out of Kanchogena Muruganda, bringing people from abroad, and you bring a relative, a cousin, or even your own sister, no muwasa, mukumuwasa sorokfune mpapura, and we have ended up with cases where actually Ogokumuwasa now has become practical and physical, and we've ended up with another difficult situation. Now, is there an Islamic punishment? First of all, to the other question in terms of, I think it was Ryan or Rashida who asked, is there, or it was Sarah who asked, is there an Islamic punishment for the kind of crime that we were talking about here? And then two, this kind of dilemma that we are finding ourselves increasingly in. That was Banyinafe. Mana watata mto, even your own sister, because
okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I think now the discussion alludes something really very, very important. And what we are discovering here, it seems there are different strands of abuse that is happening in the community. Sometimes it might happen, you know, with the knowledge of the public, within the family, as you mentioned lastly, that, well, it may be not primarily intended, but they would see where that could lead. For example, this kind of, you know, arranged marriage of convenience to get someone on the other side of the shore, and then, you know, start a new life, and then later on dissolve it up something else. We had so many incidents in this country, and it will happen maybe in other parts of the world. But coming back to the question, I think by Sister Ryan or Hafsa about the punishment. I don't think I'm going to say what the punishment is. I don't think I'm in any capacity to say so. All I can say is just to give some kind of guidance. What does the, you know, the faith guide us in that kind of situation? What we know from the faith perspective of Islam is that every single sin that we commit has two dimensions. First of all, the mere fact that it is a sin defines its the vertical dimension. If God has forbidden it, then that is automatically sin. Whether you committed it where it doesn't hurt anybody, it is already a sin. I'll give you a very basic example. If you woke up one morning, you're fasting, and then you feel that it's too much for you, or maybe not too much for you, but there is no one seeing you around, you choose to pick up something, have as the Sheikh KAYIRA would say, well, have a bite on it, that would be a sin because it's a transgression of a law that is said that at this particular moment of the day, you're not supposed to eat anything. So that is a sin, but we only have a vertical relationship. Maybe very remotely also a horizontal relationship. What I would define as a horizontal relationship is, the behavior that affects the community around us. Okay, for example, theft, and we're talking about this incest also. Now, the incest has got two dimensions. There is a vertical dimension because it's forbidden, in Islam. It's not acceptable at all, just as a legitimate marriage is acceptable. But also on a horizontal basis, you can see what we're talking about. We are fuming, we are burning because we cannot imagine it. We can see how it eats away at the core of the moral values of the society. We see the impact of that. What kind of questions are going to be explained to the resulting children? Do you call this, does the father call you a grandchild or a grandson or granddaughter? And how do you define your mom? Is your mom, is your sister? It's quite very strange. And it sends a wrong message and it desets. Okay, I think it antagonizes the normal set of, the normal institution of the society, the fabrics on which the normal society should be built on. Now, the punishment for that, I'm not going to say, but we know it is bad. Because it is bad, it will be up to the result, the existing authorities to correct that mistake. Otherwise, if you let to perpetuate and thrive, you can see how the long-term impact will be.
Is there no religious edict on that, Sheikh Chibuka? Is there no religious punishment that goes with that?
No. This is first of all, is adultery on the part of the man. Is adultery on the part of the girl is what we call fornication. There is not any other meaning to it, but it happens to be of the highest order of incest. Meaning you are actually marrying someone whom is related to you by virtue of the matrimonial relationship you have with her mom. So that one is wrong, it's not acceptable. But I'm not going to say this is what the society should do, because we know religious communities, whether it's the churches or synagogues and mosques, have no executive powers to impose, to correct, to reprimand that person and correct him accordingly. But I think their role is just to give guidance as to what should happen next. And I think in this situation, many people have been talking about whether the mother should move away and the daughter may be cancelled because maybe the father is looking for children. But the text that we quoted before, categorically makes it clear that it will never be legitimate a relationship or a marriage which involves marrying to someone who happened to be the husband of your mom. Okay, so it will never be, it doesn't matter whether she can insist, and we know many of them. You and I might be quite familiar with so many stories, whether these are true or no, there's comedy, but sometimes comedy projects what is reality. All the stories of Kalondozi in Uganda. We've seen similar incidents in the Kalondozi stories. And eventually, you see it ends up with a fight. The daughter says, you leave or you leave, you go or I go. And the man would say, well, I want to stay with because she loves me, she starts finding those kind of things. It doesn't matter whether she chooses and she wins the case and they continue their marriage. Islamically will be a continuation of adultery, it will never be acceptable. And of course, we know the horizontal effect of, how are you going to explain those children? How are you related to this person? And how was his relation with your mom? So that one is something we need to be very careful about. But I think as part of the correction as well is, I think the problem sometimes lies when we focus on the problem and not addressing the root causes of this. Islamically, when we come into marriage, we have some yards we have to use when it comes to choosing the potential partner in life. And we know we given the variables, whether you can marry someone on the basis of their beauty, the basis of their wealth, their family background, or faith. But Islam, the Prophet ﷺ emphasized consideration of the faith because faith underpins everything. And any sensible, true faith is based on the values, on the ethic, the values and the mannerism. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ said that if you are upright as someone who is known for their integrity in terms of honesty, trustworthy, and good mannerism, then that is the person. And and I know the situation that, as often people say, that love is blind. Sometimes we have a very, very little window to really think through very, very carefully, because sometimes it's the beauty that takes someone or the wealth, and we ignore the kind of character, what makes the character of this person. So I'm not going to say this was the situation. Sometimes we do try our best. No matter how much you try, we are human beings. People can change overnight. So as a result, one way of mitigating the long-term unknown, behavior is try to be very careful about where are you going to sow your seeds? What kind of person are you taking with? And also to think about from the very early stages, bring it to service, create a situation where the child, knows that these kind of behavior are not acceptable. Maybe by talking about in the presence of the man and the father, sometimes it does really help when you are sitting with your wife, because we know it can go either way. Just as we hear that, husbands in many families, do take advantage of, for example, maids. This just happens to be a member of the family, but the bottom line is the relationship is wrong. The consummation of the relationship is utterly wrong, whether with a maid, whether it's a member of the family, or with someone you have no relationship at all, but you already hit the ceiling of the number you're allowed to marry becomes unacceptable. Right. So the point here is, if there is a chance you can talk about these things, the presence of husband and wife. If it's the wife who is, worried, let her raise that issue very early enough in the presence of their child that this is not acceptable, so that the next, maybe one day when she is approached, maybe the man will say, well, we've only just talked about it. And, how can I? At least you try to set some kind of precedent that this is known and cannot be acceptable. And I cannot say which method is going to use, which one may not work.
Sheikh, I'd like you to hold just that little thought, because I can see Abu Sania bin Abdurrahman, I think, here has a hand up. Let's just give him a chance to just stay there, because I would like us now to get into the wrap-up point where we are looking at how to avoid these such incidents happening, because we've had the incidents, we know they do exist. We just want to see now how we can avoid that. But let's take a chance to hear from Abu Sania. Abu Sania, you're welcome. Your hand was raised up, and I was trying to unmute you, but it looks like if you can unmute yourself, please, Abu Sania.
I'm unmuted.
You're unmuted.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to the conversation.
Alhamdulillah. Ntambule mu Luganda oba Luzungu? Alhamdulillah. Ate kirungi ku kyoyogedde at the end, how ekibuuzo kiri how kibuuzo ky'amaanyi nnyo, kubanga kyemwabadde mwogerako before is punishment y'ono omuntu akole ki, kyo sikirinaako ntegeera, kubanga nange bwe natuninze in Hajjati Sarah Semakula yabadde ayogera nga alina example gy'awa nga ngamba subhanallah nga newuunya bwewuunya. Naye ekirungi kaakati ogenda concludinga ne how. Nze just nja kwetwala nga nze maybe ekyokulabirako oba an example nti ddala mu nsi zino ze tulimu nti tuyita mu bintu, wasa omuntu ne muzaala ne mukola ki, ne wabeerawo ebigaana perhaps ne museparating ne mudivorcing ne mukola ki, muyina abaana. Ate ddala mu nsi zino ezaffe zino America, UK, bagenda tunula nnyo oluusi sayidi y'omukyala. Ate nga Allah bw'agera tewali buzibu, kubanga era Allah atwagaliza kukolagana. Naye kaakati museparate nze n'omukyala, mudivorce nze weeyongeddeyo kujja neyo naye yeeyongeddeyo. Kati obuzibu obujjidde nti ate yo omukyala ye bw'afuna omwami omulala, otandika otunuulira abaana bo, abaana ng'ab'obuwala gwe omwami gwe yamuvaako naawe oli mu bulamu bulala. Perhaps n'omugamba bw'oba osazeewo kati kugenda naki n'omwami omulala, baana bange abo abawala mbala batandise okkula. Perhaps omwana wange oyo, omwana wange ow'obuwala, omwana oyo atandise okkulula mumpe. Kubanga jjukira abasajja twetegeera nga basajja bannaffe, ng'abakyala nabo bwe beetegeera. Bw'obeera wano ng'oli ignorant about facets z'abakyala, ng'endowooza zaabwe tozitegeera. Naye ng'omukyala w'omubuuza akubula abakyala abo kino ng'akuwoninga bakyala abo kino. Naffe abasajja twetegeera, tumanyi ebizibu byaffe. Ekyokulabirako, nze bwe nali nkyali muto nga ntandise okukola wano mu America, nkola mu Chicago downtown, nga tupaakinga amamotoka, nga tuyimirira ntupaakinga emmotoka z'abagagga, naye nga abawala abayita mu nguudo, abasajja benyumidde nabo abasajja abafirika abakulu, buli mukazi ayitawo buli munsonyiwe naye nga buli kabina akayitawo bakatunuulira nga nze ndi muto sikitegeera n'emyaka 16 ngamba kyekibatawaanya bonna basajja bafumbo lwaki abakazi bano babatawaanya lwaki buli ayitawo naye nange mala kula nenturealize nga nenjiga nti nange kati kyekintawaanya nga nange n'ekizibu kyekimu neŋŋamba subhanallah abasajja bano ebizibu byali bayitamu bintu byakubeera basajja akyobola nti omutonzi yatutaasa tubeera nga ogezaako okwekkakkanya ng'olina engeri gye wejjukiza omutonzi n'obeera ng'okola ki ng'okakkanye naye ebirowoozo ebyo bikubeerako ng'omusajja kaakati gw'olaba omwana wo ali mu kkulira mu maka g'omusajja oli omukyalo n'omugamba naye mpa omwana wange oyo ebyabasajja mbimanyi omwana wange oyo mulaba ali mu kkula asunye ebbeere mpa omwana wange oyo naye olw'ensi zino ze tulimu sometimes n'endowooza y'abakyala abamu ayinza okugamba sigenda kuwa mwana oyo naye nga muli awo muli mu tag of war y'omwana oyo akati ekintu ekyo nze mbadde njagala kibalekera nga kibuuzo abakyala abali kuno anga abakyala abali kuno mukonkludiza nemugamba omusajja ono bandibadde bamucastratinga n'omucastrating adde atya ku mwana gwakuzizza kubanga ebizibu bino abasajja bino ebizibu bye bayitamu nga naye bwali eyo ne bimukema nange taata w'omwana nyinza obbeera eno nga nina ebinkema ebisimanyi byesitategeera oba byendi mu kuyitamu imagine nga nange omukyala gwe mpasizza nga naye aleese omwana nga nange ndi eno ngamba subhanallah ono omwana ayitiridde ekintu kitandise okunnema kale nze mbadde nteeka ekibuuzo kino abali abakyala abali kuno nti bannaye munaatukolera mutya okutuyamba okubeera nga abasajja ffe abaabata babakola kikwaye situation eri wano waliwo omusajja gwe wavaako nodda ku mulala munsonyiwe erinnyo linnuma mbadde nina eddagala muno mu kamwa kange
Abusania weebale nnyo kati gwe mwennyini ng'ogenda leka nsooke nkubuuzeeyo ekibuuzo mawe n'ekibuuzo kyolese mu ddiiro which we are using to wrap up now ekibuuzo nange kinjagala okuteeka gy'oli ogenze mu bufumbo gw'owuwo yanoba n'agenda n'omwana alina gy'ali eri obweraliikirivu we buli okusinziira ku mbeera ez'abasajja naye naye gw'owasizza naye gy'avudde azze ne package azze n'omwana olabye omwana ng'alina embeera gy'alimu singa olaba nti otandise okuba nti shaitani atandise okukujjira kikyosobola okukola practically okwewala embeera eyo omukyalo omuvudde ati omwana mujjeewo omuzze wa kitaawe kikyoyinza okukola okwewala embeera eyo shaitani mwabajjidde
amazima gali nti nkyali muto ekyo sinnaba kifuna n'abaana baffe bato naye amazima gali nti okukula kuno kwempiseemu okutono ne bwe ndabye fitani y'abakyala bweri kiyinza okumpaliriza omuwala ono omwana wa mukyala wange bw'aba ayina w'asobola okudda ate ddala ng'atandise okukulirira tokukaana akato nti tekannaba kukula naye waliwo omuwala nti akuze emyaka gikuze ayina kitaawe ayina ab'eŋŋanda be gy'asobola okudda we tuba tulina choices ezo tuyinza otandika ozitunulamu nkimanyi kiyinza okuluma maama
w'omusanga eyo yennyini ate gy'omutwala nga naye ate the possibility of getting abused nayo eba gy'eri
mazima naye mu baŋŋanda ze ab'eŋŋanda ze abo at least bo bamusaayi gwe kubanga nina okwekingiriza ekintu kino ekiyinza nga bw'okiwulidde waliwo ebiyinza obbeerawo omusajja oyinza ng'ab'e-Uganda ayinza okudda ku maid
line ndaba etabuseemu awo Abusania bin Abdulaziz, thank you very much. You raised a very pertinent question which would guide us towards the conclusion of this conversation inshallah. Ajati Zamzam ensonga oziwulidde ekibuuzo okirabye ekya Abusania abakyala mu mbeera zino ez'okwawukana n'okugenda gye mulaze ddagala ki lye tuyinza okuteekawo gy'ogenze mu bufumbo obupya okuba nti ate weewaza embeera nga zino okusobola okuvaawo. Ajati Zamzam. Ajat Zamzam. Janine, you've been there from the start, but I've been trying to get onto you. I can't seem to see your mic, I think, is not on. Janine, can you hear us? Okay, I'll just go to Hajara. Hajara N, please, you've heard the question. Ekibuuzo kireeteddwa Abusania akikubye mu ddiiro n'agaa tukirwaneko. Omuchara, you've got to the misfortune of breaking up with your husband or with the partner that you are with, no genda mu new relationship. How do you try to mitigate the situation of making sure nti weewaza embeera ng'eno okugwawo? Hajara? Hey, we are running short of time. Hajara Wuri, are you there? I'll go back to Sheikh Chibuka. Sheikh Chibuka, you are still there. And then because I wanted us to wrap up now, building up this, and Rachel, I'll be coming to you shortly. Manina, Onindinyo, Mukamori. Sheikh Chibuka, the question Abu Sani Ajar raises, but also taking us to a question that I had asked you, which you had not touched, which was the question of embarrassing almost as an incest kati ezeo ovudde olese mwannyo kuva Kampala umuletedde ku mpapula omuwasizza okusobola okufuna empapula, and then we've had cases omuli ne case ya priest yali akozesa embeera z'okuwoowa bangi ng'abaleeta obafunira empapula. How do we deal with that situation? Or how bad is it actually as a situation?
Mr. KK, this is very difficult. It's very difficult. I mean, the reality is we see many of these incidents happening, and we do not know. We are yet to find the silver bullet, the solution to this challenge. But I think what we need to do is just to do the basic, preventive mechanisms that are at our disposal. I can only talk from the religious perspective, which is also very difficult to implement, because by the end of the day, we are all human beings and we are in constant battle with the temptations of our hearts. But I think the most important thing is to make sure to understand that the reality is any kind of seclusion of that situation raises the chances of the commission of the sin. Where someone is going to be, if you find that there are circumstances where you're going to stay alone at home with someone whom the shaitan may use you to be tempted to her or her to be tempted to you, these are issues we need to address. We need to know, because what we know is that often these kind of sins, as soon as once you get out of the sin, you regret, but just see things under the carpet. I think it's going to draw so much on personal accountability. Why? It is one of the hardest situations to please. It's very, very difficult. Unless you are going to set cameras across the houses so that you are minded there are cameras there can be observed all the time. But in many situations, people are staying at home with the close members of their family, or strangers. So what I would say is just a question of taking personal responsibility and accountability. And also, where things are being done in the public, I wish the executive authorities had the means to send the strongest possible message that this cannot be tolerated, because that's why regulations are there. Prisons basically are not built with the intention of taking people there, but as a message that should this happen, then we know the consequences are going to be grave. And as human beings, we need to remind us we are all vulnerable. No one is on this platform saying that I am absolutely on the right side of things. No way. Either me or you, anybody can be vulnerable. But it's a question of, taking a second thought and think about the consequence and what's going to happen. Even if, can you imagine, even if you just attempted maybe to extend a hand and then you are rejected and feel ashamed, you're going to live with that. Every time you see that child, you will know, that she knows that one guy was trying to make a first step towards something that is evil. So I think it's going to draw so much on personal accountability. And that's what makes a sin a sin.
Personal accountability. And it looks like we've already got a topic for next week, which is about the very question that Abu Sania did raise, issue of access, giving parents access in the situation of breakups. Because apparently, according to my wife, it's a big issue now that the courts, the judges are taking the matter very seriously, especially pushing wives or women to allow fathers access. Because part of the biggest problem that has led to some of the bigger problems that we are dealing with is alienation of fathers from their children. So that's definitely, I mean, a topic that is just arose from this. It is a topic that needs serious treatment because we will need to hear personal testimonies because it's from this that we actually draw conclusions. Then we can appeal to the hearts. That's where religion comes in. We talk to the heart and you understand that, we only live in this life for a short period of time. We are going to go away. Becca, I'll bring you in quickly and then go to Rachel. Becca, your line dropped while we were having you there. Thank you very much.
I'm about to die. Sorry about that. As I was saying that, I'm going to keep it nice and short. Parents tend to keep these issues as a secret, so you find that they keep it as a secret, then they leave the family. The mother and this stepdad, they split up, and then this man that's left this home where they've kept it as a secret, he goes on and finds another single mother or another mother who's also got a child. So you find that because the first family kept it as a secret, this man is going to move into another family where he's probably going to end up doing the same thing. And then also that family is going to keep it as a secret. And it's going to basically become a cycle where we should not keep these things as a secret. So if someone does such a thing, this is a huge thing. And they need to be kind of like, there has to be repercussions. And so that's why I think that as a mother, I think even before I blame the man, I'm going to blame the mother first because she was the first contact. She's the one that brought this man into this child's life. This is a vulnerable child, and this mother brought this man into the home. So mothers need to be careful whom they bring around their children, because if you need to do a CRB check, if you need to ask for a CRB check, do ask for it, because
so as you go into a relationship, before you make a decision about who to fall in love with, the CRB is part of the TBS is part of the
If he loves you so much, ask him for a CRB check if you have vulnerable kids around your house. But to wrap it up, we just need to create safe spaces where we can have conversations.
Becca, I'm just trying to imagine a situation where I'm going to look for someone and as part of the introductions, I'm sort of saying, hello, I love you, and I'm DBS cleared. Imagine that.
if that's what it's gonna take to keep our families or even children safe in our communities, please, let's just go for it. Or if you, for example, if you don't know where this man's come from, you've just met a man, because normally back in the days, families would meet, you introduce each other, but nowadays you just meet someone on the street, you go ahead, and then maybe some of them are from different countries, and you have no history about them, so you don't know what they're capable of.
But there is desperation out there. There's even a bit of panic. You've fallen out. You lost your relationship, the previous relationship. You feel like you're running out of time, and you've seen someone who just looks like they've liked you. You are quick to jump onto the bandwagon without necessarily asking. Otherwise,
definitely. But if you have children at home, you need to think about them. As the mother, if you're going into another relationship with a man that you're going to bring around your kids, you need to literally consider it. It's a big issue, because these things, we have crazy people out there, by the way. We have crazy people out there, and this thing happens. It happens, though, because in our community, in the Black community, we keep things as a secret. Family secrets are very common in our community. In our community, secrets are like top of the list, But if you were to open up a family and look at secrets, seriously, most families would have this in there. So please do take extra care. And actually, on Bridging the Gap, I think in 3 weeks' time, there's a lady that's coming on to talk about this issue. And I don't know if she'll be able to bring on a friend that's actually gone through it to kind of like, give us more about it. But yeah.
Thank you very much, Becca. Rachel, you seem to be agreeing with Becca's comment on this.
Yes.
DBS for love?
I think it's absolutely fine. In Uganda, I think they've got this, you need to produce a certificate, a healthy certificate, before you go into marriage. So I think DBS is important, especially if you've got young people in their home. But going back to taking precautions, I suppose DBS is the same as taking falls under taking precautions. When children are growing up, for example, in the Adventist faith, we've got a book called Adventist Home. They teach us to teach our children the difference between a parental touch and a sexual touch. So a child will know when they have been touched in the wrong way. be it at home or be it out there, be it in school. With this, when they know that the touch I've just received on my hand or my face or any part of their body is a sexual touch, then they can protect themselves. They can do something about it. So this is taking precautions before anything else happens to the child. You were asking about what is the punishment. In the Christian setting, I'm basing this on the words of Jesus Christ, and it's in Matthew chapter 18, verse 6, where he recommends that if you make a child stumble, the worthy punishment is to put a millstone around your neck and cast you in the lake so that you fall down to the bottom of the sea. Now, when you imagine what that means, it means that you should be buried. You know, you shouldn't be among society, and you should be removed from the community that you are in, so that you do not repeat what you have done. And stumbling, making a child stumble, is manipulating a child and making them believe that what they're doing is right, when actually what they're doing is wrong. So that stumbling, again, is not just for the fathers, but also for the mothers, because the mothers are equally as responsible as the fathers. So in wrapping up, I should say that we should take care of our children because they are our legacy. And if we do not protect them, the trauma that they suffer now would be transferred to the generations to
Rachel,
come.
thank you very much. Are there any telltale signs that someone can see that once you see these, you just know these are red flags, you should do something?
Yes, for girls, you can tell that something is going on. If they're being shy around a parent in the way that they shouldn't be shy, then you should know that you should investigate and find out what is causing this sort of shyness, and then find out and take action, really. Yeah, it's not difficult to detect.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Rachel. Back to you, Sheikh Chibuka, for the wrap up on this. I'm just seeing on the issue of, well, we say there's no religious punishment for this, but we are looking at on the way forward what we must and ought to do to deal with this situation, mitigate this situation, avoid a recurrence of such a situation.
I think there is both individual responsibility and collective responsibility, and we have to be vigilant. One of the things we've known these days is that, with the technology, so many things have changed a lot, and they do influence our behavior as parents, but also children as well. We are in this case, we are talking about the father abusing, his daughter, or his stepdaughter. But it is not in any way different from what happens in houses where we leave our children, boys and girls, son and daughter, and leave them alone and go work at night. We have a collective responsibility, and but as parents, we have the first and the primary responsibility lies in our hands. So we need to do the needful, and we need to be dutiful in our responsibility. As you know, the Prophet ﷺ said that every single person is born with an innate sense of understanding what is right and act on it, and what is wrong and avoid it. But the circumstances around them, especially their parents, can make them act differently. Now, we're not talking about children, but at the same time, as parents, we know, because this is a phenomenon, it is real, it's happening. We don't need to be shy. We need to talk, straight into the face of our children. And where possible, there is nothing wrong. I mean, in this kind of situation where, this is a stepdaughter, there's nothing wrong, just tell her directly that these kind of things happen. If any of these kind of things happen, make sure, you let me know. This is not to stage a child against their fathers, stepdads, but we know the reality. We are all human beings. Even if someone comes with a clear DBS, that does not necessarily mean that he will never be. Evil behavior is just like any behavior. They can be learned. They can be learned through interaction, through the information that comes to us because of the circumstances we go through, and so on and so forth. So we have to be on the guard and always ask Allah to help us.
Barakallahu fikum. Thank you very, very much, Sheikh Suleiman Buka and Nkungu Recho. Thank you very, very, very much for the contributions and all of you who have been part of this conversation. A difficult subject, but we managed to navigate it with the personal stories that we have had, but also trying to carve out a way forward. Sophia Murangwa says, Allah, the way you want to protect your child, then that's the way you should stay away from the woman's child. Ryan said, second, third, ATC marriages, you should prioritize their children. The spouse becomes secondary in these situations. Put your kids first. Charles K says, bottom line, never divorce unless you have to, and be ready for the price you have to pay. And Ryan says, I also think more of us need to get comfortable being on our own. Too many people rush into relationships without thinking, bandwagon effects. And Sophia comes back to say, I also think more of us need to get comfortable being on our own. Oh, too many people rush into relationships without thinking, bandwagon effect. Then you end up with the wrong person. Well, that's all for tonight. Alhamdulillah. Thank you very, very much. Very difficult conversation. We've managed to, go down the difficult subject and managed to touch it. I thank you very much for sparing the time. Next week, inshallah, we are talking about the access pass, access our children. For those who have had the misfortune of breaking up or separating up with their spouses, what happens to the children? The courts have recognized and are continuously recognizing the need for parents to have access to their children, especially fathers having access to their children, because many mothers use that as a ticket to punish the husbands from whom they have been estranged. Therefore, next week, inshallah, we shall be looking at access pass. Would lead those personal stories. They are what make this program what it is. Come, let's talk with me, KASSIM KAYIRA, our global community conversation. That's all for tonight. I can only thank you very much, and we're live on W Radio, on 75 W Radio. That's on Facebook, as well as on Umma Connect, on Zoom, and on YouTube. You can watch back any program that you have missed on YouTube. Just look for Umma Connect, or just go to 75 W Radio on Facebook, and you can see the programs. Thank you very much, and have a very good night. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.